Now, a cardiac cycle can also be presented graphically. All these phases we have seen here, they can be presented graphically on this complex of graphs. These are many graphs, line graphs. How many are they? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, 4. I put 4. And then these heart sounds, phonocardiogram, and then ECG. This is a combination. I remember we used to suffer with this thing when we were still in high school. Even if we could read, you couldn't understand it. Even if you read, I remember I read so many times reading this thing, but I never understood it. But now, I can produce it without seeing anywhere. Why? The trick was to know what are the different components. If you extract, can you extract one graph from here? The answer is yes, you can extract one graph from here. So these graphs, they were labeled, but we never paid attention to them. Even now, many people still struggle with these ones. But since I told you that we are focusing more on main pump, so this is ventricular volume. Ventricular volume, the volume of blood in the ventricle, or the ventricular volume. This is ECG. This is a phonocardiogram, the heart sounds. Then this one, that pink one, this pink is a ventricular pressure waveform. And then what is this? The black one. The black one is the black one is an arterial pressure. Arterial pressure tracing. And then this is the aortic. These are pressure tracings. Only this is a volume tracing. We have these vertical lines, demarcations. They are demarcating different phases. Now, we can extract one from here. This is an arterial waveform in blue. An arterial waveform looks like this. This is dicrotic notch. It is this one in blue, but it's just there too, and it's more slender. This is systolic pressure, closure of the aortic valve. Aortic valve at this point at dicrotic notch. And then this is diastolic pressure. Peak systolic, this is diastolic, and diastolic is here. And then ventricular tracing, which is in pink. It is like this. This one shows atrial contraction, this small wave. An increase in pressure because of atrial kick. Then from here, isovolumic contraction, and then peak systolic pressure here, and then end diastolic. No, actually end diastolic is here. End diastolic pressure, peak systolic pressure, also peak systolic pressure. Here it is diastole, and then atrial kick, and then end diastolic pressure. It is this one here. Another one is atria. It is in black. So for atria it is like this. We have the A wave, C wave, and then the V. A, C, V. X descent, and then the Y descent. This is aortic, LV. For example, I'm taking left ventricle, and then I'm taking it to be left atrium, same as right atrium. So this is the one in black. It is this one. And then these are the three waveforms. So these, I'm not saying anything about these waveforms because it is more in advanced physiology. What our aim here is to show how we get the phases of the cardiac cycle. We started with atrial kick. I've already named it here, atrial contraction. We started with atrial kick. So when the atria contract, the LV pressure, again, when the atria contract, all of a sudden, all the time, we have blood flowing from atria to ventricles. So since these are pressure tracings, the atrial pressure should be slightly higher than ventricular pressure because we need blood to flow from atria to ventricle, and this is what we are doing. The black line on the black pressure tracing is way higher than the pink pressure tracing, which is the ventricular pressure, because we need blood to flow from atria to ventricle. Here we have pressure, and this is duration. Pressure on the vertical, on the y-axis, duration on x-axis. So when the atria contracts, the pressure in the atria increases with atrial contraction. Atrial pressure increases. What is next? Blood to go into the ventricles. When that blood goes into the ventricles, there is a slight increase in the ventricular pressure called the A wave. The A wave, this wave here, it is due to atrial contraction. It is due to the 20 to 30% of blood that enters the ventricles because of atrial kick. Now at the end of atrial kick, the pressure in A and the RI and the ventricles is going to equalize. The pressure in atria and ventricle will equalize, But very fast the ventricles will enter their next phase, which is isovolumic contraction. So what happens here? In isovolumic contraction, no net blood flow. So we can label this point here as closure of atrioventricular valves. Atrioventricular valves, they close, that is mitral valve and the tricuspid valve. They will close at this point. After atrial kick, they will close. So when they close, then we are having isovolumic relaxation up to a certain point. From here, we have the aortic waveform. Where they meet, at this point they are meeting. At this point, the ventricular pressure tracing will meet the aortic pressure tracing at this point. That point has a name, or something happens here. Here, when they meet, meaning, see, this pressure in the ventricle is slightly more than that one in aorta. You see the blue, the pink line and blue lines. The pink is more, slightly more than that one in the aorta. So at this point when they meet, it is opening of semilunar which valves are those? Aortic valve and the pulmonary valve. At this point they will open. And what time was this one before they meet? Before they meet, opening of or closure of atrioventricular valves and opening of semilunar valves. There was some time that passed, and this time is the one that we can label it as this time from here to here. That time there is a phase which is called isovolumic relaxation. This is a phase, isovolumic relaxation. We have seen atrial kick here. The next is isovolumic relaxation. And since this is time here on the horizontal, this is isovolumic relaxation time or phase. You can leave it like that. Isovolumic relaxation. This is the phase here. I'm labeling it as IVR, isovolumic relaxation. Now, when the aortic valve open, what happens? Blood will try to go into the aorta and pulmonary veins. But I'm not focusing more on the volume part. On volume part, I'm not focusing. Volume is not so important for now. Pressure is more important, but volume is not important. It's important, but not much. I'm not focusing on it. Otherwise, we know that during this phase, before atrial kick, blood is flowing, and that is why this volume curve is slightly moving upwards. And when the atrial kick comes in, there is a slight increase. The increase in the volume becomes a bit steeper compared to this part here. This one is steep. Now after that, when the AV valves close, there is isovolumic. We said isovolumic means no change in volume, and this line here, volume curve, is straight, flat. It's not changing. So isovolumic relaxation or isovolumic contraction. Not relaxation, it's contraction. Sorry. Isovolumic contraction. So after opening of semilunar valves, pulmonic valve and the aortic valve, these pressures at one point they will achieve the same peak systolic pressure, whether in ventricles or atria. This is the physiological thing, that at one point the ventricular pressure, systolic pressure, should match the arterial systolic pressure. If it happens that the ventricular systolic pressure is higher than arterial systolic pressure, there is a stenosis somewhere. We shall see what stenosis mean later on, but we need this. And during the ejection, during the period of ejection, what happens? The volume, ventricular volume, goes down because blood is leaving, so its volume reduces. I showed it the other side with the changes in size of the ventricles. All along, what happens in the atria? The atria are filling, and this is its pressure. Whenever chambers are filling, the pressure keeps on increasing. Whenever chambers are emptying, the pressure keeps on decreasing. So the arterial pressure is increasing. All this, that's what I was telling you the other side, that the atria during the ventricular contraction and relaxation, isobemic relaxation, the atria is in their filling phase. So we are not labeling anything about these ones. We are not saying anything about this. We shall see it later. So here, after achieving peak systolic pressure, ejection, slow ejection starts to come in another phase, the phase of slow ejection. This was rapid ejection. This phase from here to here is rapid. Actually, from here to here, about here, rapid ejection, and then from here, this line to this yellow line, from here to here, it is slow. Slow ejection. But we are still in ejection because the aortic valve has not closed. So at this point, we gave it a name. This point here, we say that this point semilunar valves close. Semilunar valve close at this point, dicrotic notch. Here I called it closure of aortic valve because it's part of the semilunar valve. Semilunar valves close, which creates a dicrotic notch. So when you look at the pressure tracing in the atria, pressure is still increasing, but mitral valve has not opened. So there is another point here. AV valves open. AV valves open. Atrioventricular valves open. Mitral valve, tricuspid valve open. So after the closure of semilunar valves, but before the opening, to the opening of atrioventricular valves, there is a time here where the volume is constant. The volume is constant, but the time is moving, and this phase is isovolumic relaxation. isovolumic relaxation, isovolumic contraction, ejection phase, which has 2 phases, rapid ejection and slow ejection. Now next, from opening of mitral valve to atrial kick, we have, what do we have? We have the filling phase, where the ventricular volume increases. Ventricular volume increases. So also filling has 2 phases, rapid filling and then slow filling. So rapid filling happens up to like this point, and then slow filling up to this point. So we call this one diastasis, and then from here to here is the rapid filling. That's what we said, rapid filling, diastasis, atrial kick here. So what are heart sounds? Heart sounds, they correspond to closure of the valves. Closure of valves. We have heart sounds, we have S1 and the S1 and then S2. We have S3 and S4. S3 is going to be partial closure of valves. So it coincides with period of diastasis. You can call it S3. So closure of mitral valve, for example, produces S1. Closure of aortic valve, for example, produces S2. Partial closure of mitral valve produces S3 and then S4. Those are, S4 is pathologic. We don't need it. S3 is also a bit pathologic, but it can be there in young people, and it's a normal finding in young people. Then these phases can be coupled with ECG, and this is ECG, atrial P wave, atrial kick. P wave starts before the atrial kick. We said that electrical cycle is before mechanical cycle. QRS complex coincides with closure of mitral valve and then start of isovolumic contraction. T wave coincides with the peak of systole and therefore relaxation, and then the cycle continues like that. As simple as that. There's nothing to say in this. They may not ask you to draw this one, but it's very important if you can remember it. Maybe on advanced stages in cardiology, you may be required or asked to draw it. Yeah, and that is what we had today. So next time we shall talk about these pressures and describe all points, explain all the points labeled. Thank you. Have a good time.